Lincoln 103, 5 Lincoln 102, Lincoln 103 and 102.
Responding to 401 Park Instructor, Section 1 boy.
Henry 8, Henry 9. Respond to gate 437, Bravo, for your dignitary detail. 3K911, unattended, 400 lower level, near Carousel 4, black bag. GTA in progress, 401 Park Instructor, Section 4 boy.
Responding to 401 Park Instructor, Section 1 boy.
415 passenger onboard aircraft.
Control 2 Franklin en route.
484 suspect, female, Hispanic, 28 years of age, blue jeans, no further.
Control 5 Frank 401 is en route.
Hello and welcome to On the Legal Side, a production of Blue Ram Media Group, LLC, and Private Officer International. On the Legal Side is produced and distributed for education purposes, and oftentimes we're looking at legal precedents and lawsuits that have happened in recent times, and we've got one today that we do want to talk about. It's a subject that we have discussed at least 5 or 6 times over the last 20 years on the radio program, and we often discuss it in our training from state to state as well, both for private security officers, teachers, police officers, public safety, because this subject is extremely important, as this news article that I'm about to speak about really highlights, and that is the need for school staff, security officers, and others in authority, including law enforcement. They must be trained in the bare minimum: first responder, first aid, and CPR. Just in the last week, a major lawsuit has been filed in the state of Virginia in Newport News. This lawsuit came about because a 16-year-old Kalia Jones collapsed in the hallway of a school. And for quite some time, students, staff, and even their security staff milled around. They failed to attempt to perform CPR. They failed to determine what was going on with the student. They never even as much as bent over to check to see if the student had a pulse. Now the family of this student is suing the school system and 3 school security officers for $85 million for a wrongful death lawsuit. Now, before I go any further, any deeper into this, I should point out a couple of things. First of all, some states do require now that first aid CPR training be included in contract security training, regulatory training, but not all states. Some states, especially in the last 7 to 10 years, now require that civilians do something. Even if they are not medically trained, at the very minimal, they can call 911. Everyone's got a cell phone these days. There have been a number of lawsuits against law enforcement and private security in the last 10 years about this same subject, not rendering aid. And in the case of law enforcement, oftentimes not rendering aid after they have shot the individual or used some type of other less lethal. As I said at the intro, we've discussed this topic numerous times throughout the years of doing the radio program. And of course, we always get comments either via email or on social media. Hey, I'm not trained for that. I don't want to do it. It's a big, liability issue. And we're going to find out today that you're correct about that, but it's also a liability issue if you do nothing. And we've had a number of cases, like I just said, that highly clarifies what it is that security and law enforcement should do. So here we have a situation. A 16-year-old student has collapsed at a school in the hallway, and people, including staff and security officers, just milled around. This happened at the Menchville High School in Newport News. It occurred this year on February the 20th, and as videos clearly showed, the sophomore was walking out of class with a friend when suddenly she stumbles into the lockers and collapses on her back at 1:09 p.m. on February the 20th. Now, a group of school personnel was immediately there. Some were already in the hallway. But several minutes passed, and no one checked for a pulse. No one began CPR. Eventually, they were observed on the video leaning down and checking a pulse. But then they got up, and that was the end of that. They just stood there. The video clearly shows that a nurse also then brought a cup of water and splashed some of it on the student as staff shook and stroked the student's shoulders. According to the video and according to the lawsuit that's just been filed, that was the extent of any type of intervention until a school nurse, even the school nurse, all she did was brought a cup of water and splashed some on the students. She never leaned over. She never checked the pulse herself, being a trained nurse. A school resource officer then arrived next, and that's when he requested a medic. He told his dispatcher there was a head injury, that the student had a head injury, not that the student was unconscious, not that the student may have been having a heart attack or a stroke or something life-threatening as that. At 1:18 p.m., 9 minutes after the teens collapsed, the officer then began performing CPR, but only for 17 seconds, and this is all well documented on video. That's one thing about video that you must understand. Video goes both ways. It can help you in your defense. It can also give the prosecution or law enforcement evidence against what you did. So for 17 seconds, the school resource officer, who is trained, by the way, performed 17 seconds before then abandoning the task, according to the video and the complaint. At that point, none of the school staff, including the nurse, continued or attempted to continue any type of CPR or tried to get any of the 3 automated external defibrillators, AEDs, that were already on campus until emergency personnel arrived. When EMS arrived, according to the lawsuit and the video, which is clear as day, the student laid on that floor, unaided and dying, with no one. Not a teacher, not a school resource officer, not a security officer who was also there, not even a nurse had attempted much more than to throw a little water on the person and to do 17 seconds of CPR. Now, a teacher was seen on the video patting the student's leg for whatever that's going to do. Like, oh, you're all right, you're all right. The staff moved her also from her back to her side. We call that, in EMS, the recovery position. Why would you do that? She wasn't throwing up. Were they expecting that she was going to pop up and come back to life? At 1:23 p.m., medical personnel, EMS, arrived, but by that point, the teen had no pulse and was not breathing according to the information submitted. That's when EMS began CPR, and eventually 18 minutes after the teen's collapse, the assistant principal brought an AED that appeared not to work. The student was then taken to a hospital where unfortunately she was pronounced dead at 2:43 p.m. Remember that this whole incident began at a little after 1 p.m. and the student was pronounced dead at 2:43, almost 2 hours later. This has been reviewed by many agencies, by many people. And here's what I haven't told you yet. We know that school resource officers and all police officers now are trained with at least minimum first aid and CPR. Many are trained now with advanced life-saving skills because of all the gunshots and the overdoses. But in Virginia, where this occurred, all educators, teachers, including substitutes, must be certified in first aid, CPR, and AED. It's a requirement by law. The lawsuit now says that the staff, if the staff had performed these life-saving measures, the chances are the 16-year-old student would still be alive. Now, after all was said and done, the parents said the daughter had a heart condition called bradycardia. And that heart condition was known to the school. It was in her records. And yet no one checked to see if she had any medical conditions that was noted in her file. No one called the parent to ask, does your child have any medical conditions? No one called EMS for more than 10, 15, 18 minutes. It just seems to me like a lot of people failed this student. And I kind of agree that had CPR been administered immediately upon finding the student collapsed, had someone brought an AED, because all you have to do is check to see if the person is breathing, to see if she has a pulse, and if not, obviously the first step, the first life-saving measures are to perform CPR, 2 rescue breaths and 30 compressions. And there were enough staff, security officers, and a school resource officer all around her that could have, switched on and off if they were getting tired. There were enough people there that were trained, or should have been trained, that could have gotten involved and saved this child's life. Many people across the country, especially those in security, don't want to get involved. They don't want to involve themselves, whether it's because they think they might get sued, whether or not, their excuse is, well, I'm not professional, I'm not trained. Unfortunately, these people are, fortunately or unfortunately, these people that we're talking about were trained and just didn't do the right thing for whatever reason. Now, in our radio shows over the years, we've talked about security officers and what is their duty. And some states now have in the regulatory law that security officers must intervene and be trained in the minimal first aid and CPR and perform life-saving measures. I don't know about you, but I can't stand around while somebody's dying and just say, oh, well, I'm not trained. This whole story does not sit well with me. I don't care what the excuse is. I don't care what they were thinking. I don't know what they were told. But the bottom line is a child died unnecessarily. And I wish I was a fly on the wall during the trial. And if I have time, and I'm in Virginia, I will definitely see if I can't sit in, because I don't think this is going to end well for the school system, the security company or security officers, the school resource officer, or the city. I just don't think it's going to end well. I think that they are definitely, hands down, going to win the lawsuit. But unfortunately, they've lost a daughter and a life. And I think that this was reckless conduct on the part of those trained especially. And I don't think for one moment that they have a good defense of why they didn't do something more than they did. No one attempted CPR. How crazy is that? In our previous radio shows, we talked about the various laws, the Good Samaritan law, if you're concerned about being sued, it does vary from state to state, but it does help to cover you should you find yourself in a civil lawsuit. We'll take a quick break and I'll be right back.
From coast to coast, cops are cracking down on seatbelt violations. Buckle up day and night or expect a ticket. It doesn't matter who you are or where you live, they'll be on the lookout. Cops write tickets to save lives. Click it for ticket.
If the water is flowing at the low water crossing, turn around, turn around. Don't risk your life, don't do it. You might not make it through it. Turn around, turn around. Might take a little time to heed the warning signs. Turn around, turn around, turn around, and don't drown.
We're talking today about what a security officer or law enforcement should do when a medical emergency occurs where they are working, and especially in situations like schools and other environments where children are. It's our duty. It's our duty to save lives. Our job as private or public officers is to save lives, to protect, and they say serve, but our job is also to save lives, and sometimes that means we have to risk our life, but this wasn't a situation like that. This was a situation where some very basic, generic even training, these days that you can actually, when you call 911, they will walk you through the steps of performing different medical tasks, especially CPR. They will tell you how to do it. So there's really no excuse, even if you don't have the training, why you can't get involved. Call 911. I've got a potential heart attack. This person is not breathing. This person is unconscious. The chest is not rising. How do I perform CPR? And the 911 dispatcher has it right there on their computer, various different first aid training techniques, and they'll walk you through what to do next. So to say that I'm not trained, or it's not my job, or there's too much liability, that doesn't cut it these days. The other fact, like I said a moment ago before we went to the break, was that all of these people, the teachers in Virginia, are required to have basic first aid and CPR to be licensed. Even substitute teachers, and definitely law enforcement officers have even higher standard of medical training. Many are now trained as trauma specialists in the field because there's so many gunshot wounds, and also with the overdoses. So we have, a lot of different training, whether it's law enforcement or private security or even teachers. Many schools have Narcan. Many schools have been trained to do Narcan. And when you have an unconscious person who has an overdose, oftentimes they will go into cardiac arrest even. So, yeah, they definitely had the training and the skills, and I just don't understand why they didn't put it all to use. As a private security officer, we need to step in. Like I said a moment ago, some states require CPR and first aid be standard training for any regulatory contract security officer, and many companies require it themselves. Many, especially proprietary security companies, that's standard training these days because many companies have AEDs. What good is an AED hanging on the wall if your security staff hasn't been trained in it, if they don't have that CPR certification, if they don't know how to use it? What is it, just an ornament for the company? No, obviously not. So there were a lot of situations here where people had the chance to do the right thing and to save a child, and they didn't. And as a security officer, you are covered by some laws. It's not federal; it's federally recognized, but many of the Good Samaritan laws are a little bit different from state to state. So you really need to know your law, but it will cover you if you get sued, as long as you do the best of your ability. If you don't do something, obviously, that just wasn't within your scope of training or, anything that you have learned in the past, you start we're going to do an open heart surgery here. That's not going to cover it. You're going to be out on a limb there for yourself. You have to do the minimum, the best of your ability, within whatever training you have. And if you call 911, you have to follow the steps, and you're going to be covered by the Good Sam law. And not only that, but your employer, regardless of who they are, have liability insurance for you. So you're not going to be out there on your own unless you do, like I said, something way left field that's not even considered to be any type of life-saving measure. Then you might have a problem. But as long as you do, these steps, as you're being told by 911, or these steps that you have learned previously, even if you have an expired CPR card or first aid card, Good Samaritan is going to cover you on that because you're doing what you have been previously taught to do. Although it's more important these days to be, advanced, you should be maybe an emergency medical responder certified, or maybe you should be an EMT, or maybe, you should have some advanced first aid and CPR. Security officers these days are not like the 60s and 70s where we just sit in the guard shack all night and all day, drink coffee, listen to the radio, and read the newspaper. We're out there dealing with the public. I just had a class on Friday talking about this with a school campus safety team. Same thing. We were talking about the importance of having as much training as possible because you are coming face to face with all of the same things that law enforcement are going to be are involved in on a regular basis. And as campus safety officers, security officers, or law enforcement, we have to be prepared. We need to know all of, as much as possible in the first aid, how to treat an overdose person, how to treat somebody who's bleeding, or even how to stop, severe bleeding from a stabbing or a gunshot wound, which definitely can happen on your campus. Take this seriously. Whether you're a part-time security person or a full-time contract or proprietary campus officer, you work school security, whatever it might be, it's extremely important these days that you take it upon yourself to get the training. In our class the other day, on Friday, we were talking about how important it is to have this training, even if you don't have a lot of these incidents, but you have children or grandchildren. You could be out with your grandchild, and all of a sudden they could fall and collapse, or maybe they may fall and break a bone, a leg, or whatever. The more training, the more information that you have, to the better that you're going to be prepared for an emergency situation, but also you're going to be able to respond immediately. You're going to be able to help save a life, or at least assist someone And that's what it all comes down to. In this lawsuit, we are going to follow it, and we might even contact the school itself and get more information. This is not about money. This is not about let's penalize somebody because, no. Not only, unfortunately, this is a learning moment, and that's unfortunate because a life was lost, but we need to do something. You know, we should take this situation that happened and learn from it. If you're not certified in the basic first aid and CPR, go out and get it. It doesn't cost that much. Talk with your employer. Maybe they will do it for you, but it is vital for you and for those around you, those that you work with, your coworkers, your clients, their customers. It's very important. That's going to conclude this episode of On the Legal Side, and we will be on the air in just the next 24 hours on the Private Officer Beat Radio. Until the next time, y'all stay blessed, be safe, and we'll see you back here on the radio.